Okay, so we don't know for certain when many different parts of the Quran were written, so who can really say? Okay. However, let's say, for sake of argument, that even if the satanic verses were written earlier, that would not negate what was said. Okay, so if a devout Muslim really believes the Quran, including surahs 17, 73 to 75, and 20 to 52, then they have to believe that Satan throws things in, or at least tries to throw things in. And John Gilchrist in Muhammad and the Religion of Islam, in his book, page 20, says...
Page 120.
120. The other argument is weak, in that there is no concrete proof that the first part of Surah 53 refers to the Miraj, that's the ascent of Muhammad to heaven, which followed the emigration to Abyssinia. As shown already, it almost certainly refers to one of Muhammad's initial visions, limited by the Quran itself to the two he had when the ministry began. Unfortunately, one finds that virtually all Muslim arguments of a factual nature against this story are equally weak. Okay?
So that's pretty self-explanatory.
Yeah. So, moving on, the next Muslim objection is sort of a doctrinal one rather than a historical one. It says the satanic verses go against the core teachings of one God that Muhammad consistently taught. Okay, that is a true statement. Okay, however, Muhammad hasn't been proven to be consistent on everything. Okay, remember, Bukhari, Volume 5, number 490, page 317.
Volume 4.
Volume 4, 490, 317, and also Volume 4, number 400, page 267, and Volume 8, number 400, 266. They record that at one point in time, Muhammad was actually bewitched by evil for a period of time. And later on, Allah showed him the source of his bewitching, and he could do kind of a charm and get rid of it. Okay, but furthermore, the biographers and others who recorded this were still Muslims. And of course, he said that Tabari said that the Muslims had complete trust in Muhammad, so that's why they still believe it. So, if the biographers were still Muslims and they wrote about this, they themselves proved that at least some Muslims would follow Muhammad no matter what he spoke.
That's right. That's right. So I can't get over the fact, because the hadiths talk about how Muhammad was bewitched, and and he had to, in some of the hadiths it says he had to ask for forgiveness 70 times a day for his sins and all these kinds of things.
Maybe that was one of the things he had to ask forgiveness for, making the star surah.
But when I look at, I've got the Quran down here, and I've got Surah 53 right here in front of me. Now, this is the Yusuf Ali translation of the Quran. It's a 1977 edition. And but when I look in here, verse 19 and 20, it says, "Have you seen Lot and Uzzah and another, the third goddess, Manat?" The question mark. It's even to this day, the mention of these three goddesses is still in the Quran. They didn't leave that particular out.
Right.
They abrogated the verses right after it to change the intercession.
Right. They made it from a positive reference in the original to these three goddesses to a negative reference.
Exactly. So they changed it totally around from one way to another. It kind of reminds me of some of these other religions that have done things similar to that in the past, where, for instance, the Mormons, again, use their example. They came out with a book, the Book of Mormon, in the original 1830 edition of the Book of Mormon. It had many references in it to God that Joseph Smith was seeing and things of this nature, and it had more of a, you might say, a Trinitarian flavor to it originally, but in later editions of the Book of Mormon, the Mormon Church took out and changed things around, changed names, places. We've got all these changes listed.
White and delightsome to pure and delightsome people.
Well, not only that, just the actual reference to God Himself. They changed the very nature of God in the book. We've got all this in our information on Mormonism in the Book of Mormon. Those that are interested can contact our ministry. But it's interesting, in the later versions of their holy book, the Book of Mormon, they made changes in it and changed it almost diametrically from one way of reading it to almost the opposite way of reading it, because they found it was a mistake. There were some timeline problems in there. They had a guy dying before he was even born. There was problems. So anyway, they fixed them later.
Okay.
And this to me looks like a similar thing that Muslims did. They said, "Oh, we got a problem here. We better fix it."
Okay.
And they did fix it.
Yeah.
So it went from, as you were saying, a positive affirmation of these three goddesses, as Muhammad did originally, according to Muslim biographers, to a negative one where now it looks like it's okay, and they just say, well, we've got this doctrine of abrogation, which gives us the right to take out and change something that was a mistake or wrong, and we'll put something else in its place. But the problem I have with that, when I look at it from a biblical perspective, and I go back to the words of God, I look at things like Deuteronomy given by Moses, and Muslims respect Moses as a prophet of God. And Moses talked to God, and Jesus himself testified that Moses was a prophet of God. But in Deuteronomy chapter 13, quoting Moses here, it says, "If there arise among you a prophet or a dreamer of dreams, and giveth thee a sign or a wonder, and the sign or wonder come to pass whereof he spake unto thee, say, let us go after," and he says, "let us go after other gods, which thou hast not known, and let us serve them. Thou shalt not hearken unto the words of that prophet or that dreamer of dreams, for the Lord your God proveth you, to know whether you love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. Ye shall walk after the Lord your God, and fear him, and keep his commandments, and obey his voice, and ye shall serve him, and cleave unto him. And that prophet or that dreamer of dreams shall be put to death,
And they didn't put Muhammad to death.
because he has spoken to you to turn you away from the Lord your God, which brought you out of the land of Egypt." And anyone that reads Moses or any of the other prophets knows you're not to have any other gods. No other gods. And then what does Muhammad do here? They shouldn't have even let him live after that.
According to the Old Testament.
According to, well, they respect Moses. They should do what Moses says. Mm-hmm. But if Muhammad were living in Moses' time, Muhammad says, he really gets after a lot of the stones. When you look at the pre-Islamic Arabia, they did a lot of stone worshiping. They worshiped like a black stone, and other idols were made out of stone, and the Kaaba is made out of stone. And you pick up stones and you throw them at these 3 stone pillars to throw stones at the devil, and all these kinds of things that are in Islam. Well, if Muhammad had his way, well, Muhammad would. I mean, if Moses got his way, Muhammad would get a stone, all right. Mm-hmm. He would get stoned to death by Jewish law, which we find here in Deuteronomy, because he was a false prophet.
Right.
He was telling people to go after and look for intercession from these cranes, these false gods, and to respect him as such. And I'm just saying that a true prophet of God would not even make a mistake like that, where you have to come back and say, oh, we're going to abrogate. Mm-hmm. No, it doesn't say anything about abrogation here in Moses. It just says you go out and you kill them.
Right.
Because they're a false prophet.
Right. So you kind of got to ask, well, is there any other place to where verses or even part of verses were abrogated? Larry, there's a very interesting hadith that I was just reading today, and in Sahih Muslim, Volume 1, number 1433, this is pages 329 and 330, it says in part, Anas said, Allah the Exalted and Great revealed, and there's a verse, regarding those who were killed at Bir Medina, and we recited it, till it was abrogated later on, and the verse was like this, Convey it to our people the tidings that we have met our Lord, and He is pleased with us, and we were pleased with Him. Okay, so the interesting thing about this is that this was a